So this video is to go through the warm-up, question number 1 and 2. Remember, you should have tried this alone before checking your answers. So it says describe the transformation in words and then graph g of x. So yesterday we talked about focusing on reading left to right and thinking about whether it's inside the parentheses or not, because that's going to help us know which variable it's going to change. So if I read left to right, the first number I see is that -4, which is inside with the x, which means it's going to change my x. This one we talked about yesterday, very similar to point slope. So we have to think about what would make it back to 0. I would actually add 4. So if I think about the x-axis, which is horizontal, and I add 4, that's actually going to the right. So one of my transformations that I'm going to do first is right 4. Then the next number I see is the +3, which is on the outside. Okay. Since it's on the outside, that's going to change the y, and it's going to add 3 to the y. I should put x up here. Sorry, I forgot. So let's think about both of them are going to be adding, but how does that change how my graph looks? Well, the y is vertical, so this is actually a vertical shift up 3. So that's why it's really important to know, is it impacting the x or the y? So yesterday I showed you 2 different strategies using the table or the coordinates, and remember I said it's totally up to you. What do you prefer? And like I mentioned, people tend to gravitate towards the coordinates, so that's what I'll always model, but that does not mean that's what you have to do. So you can make your table or make your coordinates. So I'm going to write down all 4 coordinates of that. Kind of looks like a check mark or a square root sign. So I have those 4 coordinates, and then I'm just going to follow my order. So first thing it said was right 4, which changes my x. So all I'm doing, I'm going to leave the y the same. I'm just adding 4 to my x. So -6 plus 4 is -2. -6 plus 4, so those ended up matching, and that makes sense because it was a vertical line. And then 0 plus 4 is 4. And then I literally just recopy the y's. So that was going right 4. So this was our describing in words up top. And now I'm just doing the shorthand to make sure that I've done everything. And now I'm going to go up 3. So remember, up 3 changes my y's. So I'm literally leaving my x's alone and then adding 3. Oops. So -2, and then -2 plus 3 is 1. -2, 5 plus 3 is 8. And then 8 plus 3 is, oops, almost wrote a 3 because I was saying it, is 11. Okay. And then I just graph those points. I'm still going to maintain that same shape. So when we do these transformations, I'm not changing the shape or what point's connected to which. So -4, 5 is where this point ended up. -2, 1. -2, 8. And that still makes sense because if I look and connect this, it's going straight up and down. And it was going straight up and down. So that should stay the same. And then 4, 11. And that was on a slight incline. You can also check with the slope, because the slope, if you're just moving left, right, up, down, the slope should stay the exact same, regardless of your function, between each point. So that was example number 1. So what I'm looking for is did you write this in words? And then did you actually graph it? And showing me some kind of work. I know this one, you could have also counted on the grid. The only issue with that is once we get into more transformations on Monday, it might be a little more challenging to kind of keep that all in track. Okay. So number 2, we're going to do the same thing, remembering left to right. So the first number I see is a 2, which is outside. which means it's going to change the y. Remember, we're not going to always have to do outside y. That's just a thought process that helps us establish a routine. So 2 is outside, which means it's going to impact the y. So then I ask myself, am I going to add or am I going to multiply? So if I look at this, it is being multiplied. So I'm going to keep it that way. So if I think about multiplying something by 2, that's going to get bigger. So we call that a stretch by 2. And then the next number I see is that +1, which is in the inside, which means it's going to impact the x. So if I think about that, remember going back to point slope, we'd actually have to subtract 1. So we're going to subtract 1. And if I subtract 1, that's going to the left. So how I would describe that in words is left 1, or horizontal shift left 1. So those are my transformations. I have to do this one first, that one second. So again, I want to write down my points. And just to remind you of the table option, because it really does not matter, I'm going to write those points down, which was -2, 5, 0, 0, and 2, 5. And the first one I'm going to do, I tried to color code it, is I'm outside, so I'm going to change my y's, and I'm just going to stretch them by 2, which means multiply by 2. 0 times 2 is still 0, and then 5 times 2 is 10. Then I'm going to go left 1, which means subtract. So -2 minus 1 is -3. 0 minus 1 is -1, and 2 minus 1 is 1. And then those outside pieces are my last point. So -3, 10, -1, 0, and then 1, 10. I'm going to do my best to connect it on the iPad. I'm not in Notability, so it doesn't let me draw those straight lines that I love so much. And there we go. There's your warm-up for today. And again, this is what I'm looking for when you describe in words, and then graphing.